Welcome to another edition of
Shape
Shorts and the iSticks. We have covered to animate, originate, rejuvenate, stimulate, and today we're going to talk about Deus Ex Machina and tell the story. Now, Tony, I have to tell you that because I know you're going to forget this.
Well,
you and I invented them, and I have to remind you every time we do anything what they are. What's the matter with you as a human being?
I had to tell you many times that when asleep. This is the usual position that Stu Bar is usually in, is asleep mode. Yeah, particularly
When you're talking. Well, so is everybody else.
That's true. You know, we should say something though. We went down to it's a great little town, right? You and I
don't know what town you're talking
Bisbee.
about. Oh,
Bisbee, Arizona, about 60 miles.
When
no,
did we
100
go
miles.
there?
Last week or
No, we
2 weeks
didn't.
ago. We took our producer down
It was
there
about 3
because
weeks ago.
He didn't know much about the area.
It
He
was
only been living here like 50 years, and he doesn't even know about Bisbee. And it's a mining town, is that right? A little now it's a tourist attraction. Great little town. You and I have both called it like the southern Italy because of the way the homes are on the hills and everything. And we tried our best to lose him down the mine. We took a mine tour, didn't we?
Well, you know, he wouldn't go.
He wouldn't go down.
I told him to look down that shaft.
Yeah, and I know
And
we could have got away with it. But
I know.
He found us. He found us.
Well, the director said, "What's he doing over there?" They made him get back on the train.
Exactly right. We almost got ratted out. We had to be careful. But anyway, if you're in the area, we're in Tucson, and we highly recommend. Great little town, Bisbee, Arizona. Great tours down there. We had a lot of fun. We're here.
Gives you the idea of it. So we want to finish up today on the I6 with the Deus Ex Machina and to tell the story in this. And this is Deus Ex Machina is sent to bringing something different in from the dramatic.
Right, because Deus Ex Machina literally means God from the machine, and it's a theatrical term, where in Greek drama and many drama after that, a problem would occur during the play. And we're familiar with that with binge watching many series, where a character gets so convoluted in a problem, can't get out. They go spiral downward, spiral downward, spiral downward, and then suddenly out of the blue, things just go well. You know, this is fixed, that's fixed, and suddenly they reemerge as a new person. Problem. Problem is solved and they're fine. And Deus Ex Machina is really a phrase that now applied as solving pretty much complex problems with unorthodox solutions.
Create a new methodology.
Create a new methodology.
Which is part of the creativity
exactly
that we talked about in the previous example.
The previous one was stimulate and to rejuvenate. There's the three and four. Gotta get to I know. You see, I'm trying to follow you and
no, it's too advanced. Yeah. I understand. You have a hard time following. I'll slow it down for you.
I'm glad you did that. Excellent. And but anyway, Deus Ex Machina, we put it in as I5, the inspirational 5, because the idea that not all problems have a direct solution following A, B, C, D. Sometimes you really have to take a curve and go around. And God out of the machine is precisely that. In other words, the phrase was, where did that come from? Where did that solution come from? And that to me is been fascinating through history. And it's in science, it's in philosophy, it's in humanities.
History.
You
want to look at, too, the when that happens, when they have that day, interested in how did you do that? What inspired that person to come up with a completely unorthodox that may not have been seen for 2 or 3 millennia, and then when everybody sees it later, they go, "It's so obvious."
Exactly.
But
exactly.
as part of it is, it wasn't obvious. We could take 20/20 hindsight in history and go, "How come they didn't know?" Well, maybe 1,000 years from now, they'll be looking at us and go, "How come they didn't know?"
Exactly, and that's really what the point is, to recognize that in our history, there have been several ideas. Ideas are easy to come up with. And you have an idea like one every 10 seconds. We pretty much have to shut your ideas up, don't we? I mean, every time.
Most of them go nowhere.
Yeah, fortunately, tell our audience, fortunately, they don't go anywhere. But when an idea is implemented, that's significant. And implementation is the hardest thing. How do you get from an idea to a reality in our universe? How do we use it? How do we implement it? Deus Ex Machina is a kind of forcing it that way, correct? That the idea is, how do you get out of this? And we taught philosophy. There were many times when we would bring a problem in. How do you recognize the color blue? And how do I describe the color blue? How would you do that? From John Locke in terms of sense perception, from the British empiricists, Hume and so on. How did they do that? How did they go from a mental construct to the universe out there? What was their mechanism?
And I think another example of this we could use, and this goes with tell the story and how it goes. How did, after the American Revolution, a group of revolutionaries who come up with the Articles of Confederation, a miserable failure, absolute miserable failure, do something almost unheard of in history? Meet again, erase it,
start over,
and create something entirely different, inspired by John Locke. What inspired them to do something? Because most revolutions are failures.
Exactly.
Because a revolutionary knows what they don't want; they don't know how to construct.
Exactly, and you could bring a good point up, because a lot of our students didn't recognize that our foundation in our country is based upon philosophy and ideas from France and Locke,
from
Hume,
from
Rome, mostly Rome.
Yeah.
So in essence, this would lead us directly into the idea of, from Deus Ex Machina, how to solve problems in an unorthodox way.
To tell the story.
Yeah, behind every one of these is a story.
Yeah, and I've always been fascinated, because I always used to tell them, what's the unique thing? Revolutions aren't unique. What was the unique thing? I mean, think about it. If you put yourself into, it's easy to read a history book and go, how interesting. Put yourself there. You meet to fix something you can't fix. How often do everybody who may be listening in their individual lives, try to fix things that can't be fixed? How many times do you say, it's done?
That's right.
And it's, to me, when I looked at that history, of all the geniuses of the Americans early on, it's the fact you realize it didn't work and you erased the board. You didn't take anything, you erased it.
And you
said, I got to start over.
Completely start over. But tell the story is interesting, because behind every great idea, it's just not a great idea unless you have the story behind it.
Right.
And then you start to realize there's a connection. Again, this goes right back to stimulate and to rejuvenate. There's these connections, right, that we develop aren't our connections. They're connections that are there, and we have to research them and find them. And then you start realizing behind those connections is a tremendous story.
And the student, I think the best thing about the student is, by doing this, I get the student, I ask them questions. Why would they do? What do you think led them to? Even if they've never read it. Right. The student now goes from passive to active.
Exactly.
Well, how would
stimulate I6, I3, which is to stimulate.
And then you go say to him, if you were there, what would you have done? Knowing only what you know, not now, would you have been able to do that? Would you have been able, even in a story?
Right.
I mean, think of a man like Goethe, who writes Faust over decades and puts it down. How many of you have done that? And sometimes you're considered a failure unless you finish it right away.
Exactly.
But how did he do it? He went over, or Voltaire making fun in Candide of everybody. So, how would you have done that?
Well, you bring up an excellent point. The point is that once you have the idea that behind it is a particular structure, and that gets forgotten. When that gets forgotten, then we pretty much lose the connection. And we, in the previous shape shorts, we had indicated that we have a cultural amnesia. And if we just compartmentalize it so dramatically, then it becomes what we mentioned before as kind of a cold compartmentalization.
Boring. Let's
And
use the word
boring.
boring.
Boring is exactly right. And no wonder these students just are wondering, at least maybe, where did it come from? And they may not even question where it came from. Maybe they're thinking we should know this, and they don't.
Yeah.
So in effect, you have a very strong appeal for understanding why. And you brought up earlier, creativity and curiosity are the remnants of that kind of question.
And that's what I think when we're done with all the I6, that's what we want to inspire people.
Exactly.
It's the creativity
Right.
and the curiosity. And that's, I think, the most fundamental thing we can do.
Exactly.
And I think every teacher out there, we brought it up, you and I brought it up over.
All the time.
We did it in the last episode. Teachers and not others. Why do you forget most? It's not necessarily they were horrible.
No.
But what did you remember about the best one? And everybody out in our audience has teachers they remembered.
Exactly. And they can go right back to when they were third and fourth grade.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it's not
And
college.
it doesn't necessarily have to be college. In fact, by college, you're really looking for that because you've had some exposure to it. And you go, I wish I had so-and-so as my professor here. But when we talk about the I6, and that's really what we wanted to conclude today with, what just to summarize, we had to animate, right, to originate, rejuvenate, stimulate,
Deus Ex Machina, and tell the story. And we finished with tell the story last because it's really the accumulation of the other five.
I guess they tell the story as the glue in a way.
Yeah,
the mortar between the building material, because each brick is a kind of a stopping point. But there are brick upon brick upon brick, and what connects these together is really that story.
And you had to bring up a good point. I like that analogy, because how are most of them taught? They're not taught the wall. What they're taught, here's a brick, here's a brick, here's a brick. There's no mortar connecting any, and that's why they lose their curiosity, they lose their incentive, and to be blunt, I keep saying, it is boring.
It is,
and I don't blame them for being bored.
Exactly. Well, you brought some very good things into class, as I remember. They were pretty controversial, and many times you came to my office with your hands out like this, waiting to be locked up because you said some pretty dramatic things.
One thing I'll tell you.
I told them once, they were in there, they weren't doing anything, so we came in there. I took a Bible and threw it in the trash from across the room, and I called them all idolaters. I said, you don't have golden cats, you got a book. What's the difference?
The problem with that is maybe there were other books as well.
I can put them in.
One thing a student could do is say, well, I'm taking our philosophy book and I'm throwing that in the...
Well, I dropped that student right away. They're out of here.
Well, the metaphor that every idea is not an idea without a story.
No.
Is really the content, so that when we tell a story, it becomes kind of the mortar, as we said earlier, but also the foundation of the I6. And that's why we put it as the last one. And go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
we got a producer who's sending us crazy notes. He wants us to talk about Bigfoot.
Well,
now I'll talk about Bigfoot. It's called Tony.
No,
Tony.
Well,
if you've ever seen those the famous picture book, that's Tony. He did it as a joke. And you know what amazes me about him? People believed it. I said they wouldn't. He said they would. He was right. I was wrong.
I wanted. I wanted to take two giant of those aluminum bowls, connect them together, and go to the northwest and just go into the mudded area and just put this big bowl, two bowls down, and call it Big Butt. And I figure, how long would it take for that to go around?
Oh, it'd go around fast.
Around fast. So if you're in the northwest and you happen to see two depressions, well, it could be Big Butt, or as we sometimes called it, Oshkosh.
Oshkosh.
With the proper pronunciation on the front. So anyway, I guess want to thank everybody for joining us for our introduction shape shorts of our I6. And of course, Stu Barr being divorced, what, 10 times? Is
Five.
It, no,
five.
no, no,
No,
no,
it's
no. It's got to be
five.
more than that. I'm sure it's more than that. You can get great tutorials on this.
Oh, yeah, sure. If anybody's interested, you know.
And in any case, thank you for joining us on this. We will have more Shave Shorts on various topics. And our next one might be Stu Barr discussing nothing.
Well,
About
it'd be the same
nothing.
thing as you did in class.
Well, my nothing is space.
My nothing is time then. So
There
we
it
can
is.
stare at
Now
each
we
other
can
for
have
2 hours.
Space and time.
Okay.
Thanks everybody.
Bye bye.